This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
Welcome to Mind Love, episode 218. Today's episode is all about the power of grounding and neutral energy fields.
How do we preserve our authentic selves while also meshing and interplaying with others' energy constantly? Is having an awareness of what is grounding in general, right? Knowing what grounding is in general, and then especially having a practice, like a personal practice of knowing how to ground oneself that's integrated, especially as an empath. I had to learn about grounding electrical engineer style of like, okay, let me look at circuitry in electrical engineering. That's where the word grounding comes from. It doesn't just come like out of Reiki or any of the energy arts. It actually comes from electrical engineering.
Turn up your frequency with Mind Love. Bite-sized brain hacks for seekers, dreamers, and doers. It's time to give your mind a little love with your host, Melissa Monti.
Hello, love. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that cute little button. Subscribing, sharing, and 5-star reviews are really a great way to give back if you find this show helpful. They help the show climb the charts, which helps me get even more amazing guests for you. Today, I would like to share a review from Jamie Runs 214, who says, Mind Love is one of the best podcasts I've ever listened to. Usually the host just asks questions and I listen mostly to the guests, but I find myself just as intrigued, if not more, by Melissa's perspective. She clearly lives what she shares about, and she's open and relatable, even with her struggles. Thank you, Melissa, for changing my life. Oh, Jamie, I loved this review so much. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for taking the time to write this. Each one of these really does light up my day, and I'm so grateful. And now on to the show. Energy is everything. No, seriously, it's everything because everything is energy. I was just reading how touch is actually an illusion. Think about it. Everything is made up of energy, and what we think of as a solid, immovable object is just particles in really rapid movement so tiny that we can't see it. At the atomic level, everything is really just hovering around each other. So when you feel like you're touching something, it's really just a result of electron repulsion and the electromagnetic field that surrounds us all. Pretty cool, right? Whenever I feel stuck in my life, I remind myself of that. Every part of my being is in movement right now, so how can I be stuck? My mind is just creating that illusion too, along with everything else in my reality. Our minds are powerful creators, whether we like it or not. Our minds can create anything. But without conscious management of it, it can also create a lot of problems. Every problem we have is in our minds. Yeah, I know, there is a lot of screwed up things in the world, and a lot of us have had some pretty screwed up things that have happened to us. But ever notice how two people can be living with the same circumstances, but it's only a problem for one of them? That's because it's not the circumstances, however bad they are, that create the problem. It's our thought about it that creates the problems. Our thoughts create the anxiety, the dread, the fear, the worry, guilt, hopelessness, despair. And that's a hard pill to swallow. I have definitely been in situations where I'd like to argue at that point. Like, yo, self, remember sitting in a jail cell pretty sure you ruined your life because you allowed yourself to be manipulated by the criminal you were sleeping with? But then I would step back and ask myself, well, how many of my thoughts contributed to me being in that situation? Or what's actually happening regarding that situation to me right now while I'm sitting on my couch thinking about it? What am I even thinking about right now? And is any of that really happening? Or is there another way to think about it that will help me get up and make a new choice toward a different direction? Even when it doesn't seem that easy, it's usually your thoughts that are convincing you that there's nothing to be done. One of my favorite books is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. He survived the Holocaust, and he started connecting with other survivors. Well, he became interested in why some seemed to be just broken by the terrible experience, while others went on to live happy, fulfilled lives. What he found was that the ones who were doing well were able to find some sort of meaning in their experience. Maybe it led them to a higher purpose or connected them to their strength. It didn't even really matter as much what that meaning was, but that it meant something for the person who found it. That meaning anchored their experience into something greater, some greater source maybe. Whenever I'm feeling anxious or depressed, it's a sign that I'm imbalanced. I'm either spending too much time in my ego instead of my source or my higher self, or I'm spending too much time in my mind instead of my body. And a lot of times, those are one and the same. When I'm in my mind, I am in my ego. It's hard to feel connectedness to everything around me because this is me and these are my problems and I am separate from you in this moment. So much of our lives plays out in our head these days. We're on our phones and computers instead of living and feeling and doing in our bodies. So we feel through our minds. We feel pain through our minds. And usually that's anxiety or depression or jealousy, envy, unfairness, hopelessness. We even have VR headsets now so we can have a body all in our minds. I'm actually very concerned about the metaverse. If we think childhood depression and anxiety is high now, this doesn't seem like a good plan. But that's not what this episode is about. When I'm feeling anxious or depressed, I either connect to source through meditation, or I connect to my body through grounding or movement. And I hear you out there, but Melissa, isn't meditation going into our minds even more? Not really, because it's a practice of disengaging with the thoughts, allowing them to pass without attachment. So you're practicing releasing the ego and connecting to source. Or I use movement or grounding practices, like yoga, or walking barefoot on earth, eating root vegetables, putting my hands in the dirt. To be honest, I used to think that this was a little woo-woo, which is totally fine by me anyways. I love the woo. My life started changing when I embraced the woo, so I will woo all over this floor. Spiritually speaking, that is. But today, we're going to actually get into some of the science of it, along with 1,000 other fascinating things. And our guest is Victoria Whitfield. She's a sensei, a published author, a successful 6-figure energy healer. Wow, that was hard to say for someone with a very minor lisp. Well, she helps people get connected to their natural intuition and truly be visionary so they can work less and increase their impact. 3 key things we will learn are how to stop being an emotional sponge, reframing your feelings of being too much or not enough, and the science of grounding. Before we go deep today, I want to give you a little gift, and I want to give it to you every single day. It's called the Morning Mind Love. I know how life can be. You're all fired up after an inspiring episode, and then a new day or a new challenge comes at you, and it's just hard to keep up that energy. Well, the Morning Mind Love is kind of like an oracle from your higher self to help you start each day with a positive focus. Plus, when you sign up, you get 2 free gifts, a 30-minute binaural meditation and 30 days of journaling prompts to help you remember who you truly are. And it's all completely free. So join over 9,000 people and go to mindlove.com to sign up or text the word morning to 33777. And now let's welcome Victoria Whitfield to the show.
My pleasure to be here. I'm so excited.
So give us a little background on you. What got you interested in energy work and helping entrepreneurs through that? How did you become aligned with your current life path?
Oh my, yeah. So my initial inspiration came from getting hurt. I know for many healers, they come into their healing work by getting hurt. Originally, I was introduced to Reiki because I got trapped in a window while I was at work. Like the window broke and fell on my fingers, which was super painful. Long story short, it happened because I had a problem asking for help while I was at work. I missed my window of opportunity to ask for help, to open the window, or to maybe, miss my window of opportunity to ask for help, especially on a hot day, trying to like create, a little bit difference in the temperature in the room. Instead, I was like, I'm going to open the window by myself. And I had before in the past, but this was the day that it broke and fell on my fingers. And it was super painful. And in that moment, being trapped in the window, I had an epiphany. Weirdly enough, like all the blood had like left my ability to scream. So while I was like hanging out waiting for help to come on its way, I had this realization that I had got myself into this, and I wanted a way out. I wanted a way out. And when finally my boss came around and was like banging on the window trying to get me out of it, there was this moment of clarity that I had that said, you know what? If I don't come out of this, I won't be able to see my nephew. I love my nephew. And so I'm going to come out of this. Forgive me for the graphicness of what I'm about to say, but when I decided I'm coming out of this, I ripped my hands out of the window, looked down to the bone and fainted, split my glasses on the side of the desk on my way down. And when I came to, my boss was very peacefully saying, put your feet on the floor, breathe deeply, you're going into shock. I'm going to do healing touch while the ambulance is coming. Put your feet on the floor. He was like guiding me through a mindfulness exercise to manage like the shock that I had, all of like the injury and blood loss. And that was the day in my life that I've found out that there's such a thing as having a toxic can-do attitude. That I believe I can do everything, but doing everything by yourself can actually, at work especially, end up working you into the hospital. And so that was also the first day that I experienced healing touch as a modality, and which is one of many energy work modalities out there. And as I was going through this and experiencing like, oh my gosh, the swelling was going down, watching him like without even touching me, like doing these like interesting hand motions. I had never seen anything like that before. That opened up my curiosity about energy work and energy healing. And it started my own healing journey around, why do I work in a certain way that doesn't at all value me and my health? Why do I push myself past the limit in order to show up for other people? Or constantly, like if people ask me, do you need help with this, blah, 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 my automatic response is, I got it. And that internal healing journey for me led me in the direction of Reiki, which is like, that was part of my own personal path for like learning to love myself again and healing my body and my energy and learning more about my body and my energy and learning to love myself. But over the course of that spiritual journey, that's like my own spiritual healing journey, but coming from that awakening that I had by working myself into the hospital, I learned many things about myself. Like, for example, that my maternal grandfather, I never got to meet him because he worked himself to death. He actually dropped dead at work at 52 years old of a massive heart attack. He literally worked himself to death. He left his 3 girls orphaned because he wanted to be the best, right? Putting performance over health and well-being. And so that, like, I wanted to let you know that some of the, like, kind of scary background that, like, brought me into learning more. Why do I value my energy? Why do I value living in a health-oriented way, especially at work? That's why I value it, because, like, I not only myself have worked myself into the hospital, but I also come from a family that's also happened. I haven't even told you about with my parents. Both of them I've had to drive into the hospital for them stress-induced blackouts because of their work, their jobs stressing them to the point where they black out, and having that experience. So in the practice of Reiki, when you're learning it, I'm a Reiki master teacher 4 times over, certified. And in the practice of Reiki, when you are learning it in a serious environment, you have to practice it regularly. And so you practice it on other people. And when I was practicing, I had a strange experience. Oh my gosh. Attracting people who, you know, Melissa, they would resonate with my energy for whatever reason. I don't know why. I was just practicing Reiki until finally I received some coaching and say, hey, look at what is the common denominator? What do all of the people that keep being attracted to you as you're practicing Reiki, what do they all share in common? And to my surprise, all of them, all of the people who would come back to let me practice more Reiki with them, who were really enthusiastic about the insights and the healings that they would experience, who I really resonated with, 100% of them just so happened to be entrepreneurs. It was bizarre. For me, I didn't know why at all. I had no idea. I was just, I'm doing, the forms, the Reiki practices so that I can increase my skill. I didn't know that I was attracting entrepreneurs in particular. And so that initiated a whole nother spiritual and self-reflection journey of like, well, why is that? Why am I attracting these people? And come to find out, going on in the background that I just took for granted, I actually come from a family of entrepreneurs and business owners. I just thought that was what everyone did. I didn't know that wasn't normal, that everyone in your family has either a business of some kind or a side hustle. Like, I thought that was normal, or that is like a community leader. Like, that's normal in my family. But having that coaching of like, look at what is the similarity between all of the people that you're attracting, and finding out these are all entrepreneurs. So, okay, if they are just a reflection of me, what is going on in me that's creating this situation? Come to find out, I learned more about myself than I had ever known because of that. So to answer your question, like, I'm sorry if I overwhelmed you, Melissa, with this answer, but
no, it was riveting.
It's the truth.
Growing a business is a lot like personal growth. You need the right tools and the right support system. But finding those perfect team members, that can kind of feel like searching for a unicorn, which is why I'm excited about Indeed's approach. Instead of endless searching, they focus on matching. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. It's a matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors. And here's what makes it so special. Their technology actually learns what works for you. So the more you use it, the better it gets at finding people who align with your vision. Think of it as your hiring meditation app. It helps you cut through the noise and focus on what matters. You can schedule, screen, and message candidates all in one place. And it works. 93% of employers say Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites. And that's why more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide trust Indeed to help them hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/mindlove. Just go to Indeed.com/mindlove right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/mindlove. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. I don't know why it took me so long to invest in good bedding. I resisted it for years, but something flipped in me about 3 years ago. And now I'm basically a pillow connoisseur. I've tried them all, and I get weirdly excited about good bedding. Because here's the thing, we spend a third of our lives in bed, and the quality of that time affects literally everything else, which is why I'm so excited to tell you about my latest obsession, Lagoon Sleep Pillows. What sets them apart is their matching system. You take a quick 2-minute quiz about your sleep style and your preferences, and then they match you with your perfect pillow. I was matched with their Otter pillow, and I am so impressed. Lately, I've just needed more support, and this seems to cradle me in all the right places. I'm also low-key obsessed with their travel pillow, which I use for way more than just travel. I actually hug it, use it as leg support, and of course, take it on trips with me. Well, the secret is in their adjustable fill. You can add or remove it to get that perfect alignment for your spine. A study even found that the right supportive pillow can improve sleep quality by 63%. And Lagoon lets you try their matched pillow for 100 nights risk-free. Free returns, no questions asked. Falling asleep has never been easier. I toss and turn less and just wake up feeling refreshed every morning. Go to lagoonsleep.com and take their awesome 2-minute sleep quiz to find your match. Use the code MIND for 15% off your first purchase.
So this is exactly why I care about meditation and energy work and healing specifically for entrepreneurs and leaders is, for one, I've worked myself into the hospital. I've lost family members to overworking, right? And something about leadership and showing up to serve in the workplace, something about that in the social consciousness puts health last, like it just last, or it's not even on the list from at least around where I come from. And that's why I value this so much. And then in the process of doing energy work, there's no such thing as coincidence. Looking back now, of course, I would attract entrepreneurs like CEOs and leaders. Of course, those would be the people who would vibrate with healing that toxic can-do attitude that can come with being in the workplace.
So I really loved what you said about, these are the people that keep coming back. If these people are a reflection of me, what is this saying? And that's because that's something that you have to learn, that maybe your experience in life is a reflection of you, and it's not something that people intuitively know. How did you come to that realization? Was it previous training? Because, working in energy work, you've got to be on some sort of self-development, like my experience is a reflection of me, or what was that realization like?
Well, I will give credit where credit's due. I have magnificent teachers and mentors. I reek of my mentors. I'm like, you can, their fragrance is all over me. That phrase, that's like, I hate it. And it's so true of like, what is the pattern in me that is creating this situation? That came from one of my very first spiritual teachers, Joanne Manzella, who used to do hand analysis for the FBI. And so I got like a palm reading from her, which is, and it was just amazing, to learn more about yourself, like really depth palm analysis. And Joanne Manzella, she was the one that initially said to me, when we were talking about different things that have been coming up in my life or bothering me or things that I don't like, etc., she's like, well, ask yourself, what is the pattern in me that is creating this situation? And I was so mad. I remember I'm like, no, I want to blame something else, not me. I want to blame somebody else. This kid, no, this is not my fault. But it stayed with me. It's been like about 20 years since she told me that initially. It's amazing how powerful that question can be. I like to think of powerful questions like that. I call them journey questions, where simply by asking that question, it opens up a whole another journey where the question is more important than the answer. Because there's so many answers that can come out of simply asking that question. So yeah, I love it. But that, all credit where credit's due, that came from her.
One of the questions that does that for me, that at least lately, it's always evolving. Like what hits me this year may not hit me at all next year, but something else will. And so the one that keeps coming up for me recently is, why am I resisting this? And it's funny because this is something that worked for me years ago and then just kind of fell off the wayside. But then lately, I don't know why, I've had all sorts of resistance coming up. But I started to notice that the resistance itself was just becoming a pattern, like that in itself. So all these, suddenly I was like disliking more things than I'm used to disliking. And then I was like, why? I liked this stuff last year. And then I was like, wait, resistance itself is becoming a deeper neural pathway than it needs to be. So how can I yes and my life for the time being to counteract that?
Yeah, that's so powerful. Because the words that we say shape our reality, as if we are computers and the words that we are saying are the program and the command prompts that are bringing up the different programs that are expressed in the interface. Like, to be able to yes and rather than but or should, rather than shoulding on yourself, you're able to bring a yes and. It's much more inclusive and softens the blow. Whereas when we have those exclusions such as but or, we cut off the resource of the other side. Whereas when you're bringing in the yes and, you receive all resources and all opportunities available to you. I have a friend of mine, Andrew, dear friend of mine, who has a background in improv. And he says in improv, we always say, but and. There is nothing is rejected in improv. Whenever things come up, nothing is rejected in improv. And that's how you keep the creative flow going. So if someone says but, always say but and, so that you can keep that creative banter or the joke or whatever continuing going rather than stopping the flow of the improv sketch. Mm-hmm.
I went to an improv class in LA years ago. Well, actually, I did a few of them. When I first moved to LA, I did some improv because it was fun. And then I did a workshop called Self-Improvement. And it basically brought out all of these improv tools like the yes and there was a bunch of them that help you in your daily life. And I think about those, and it doesn't even just have to be with my own internal issues. It helps even in my relationship with my husband. I'll notice sometimes, like, is our communication, like, there's ebbs and flows. And sometimes, like, there was a period of time where we were both really stressed with having a new baby and, like, not sleeping much. And it was funny because our conversations, which is one of the reasons we fell in love, because our conversations could just flow. And like, he might point out a sign over there and be like, what's with that logo? Or like, yeah, they use that color. Like something dumb. We'll just like point at something. And then we'd end up building a whole story upon it. And we lost that for a period of time when we were stressed. And he took that workshop with me because one of my friends put it on. And I just said to him, we're not yes-anding each other lately. I'll mention something and you'll look at me like, why are you bringing that up? And you'll say something and I'm like, don't waste my time. It was like a 2-week period. We're both very sleep deprived, but still we caught it early. And I was like, we need to just yes-and each other. I miss our banter. And then it came right back to where it was, but it made me realize like it was that contrast that made me realize even what it was that was so special about our communication anyways, and how we would just build upon what the other person was talking about, whether or not it had anything to do with me, it interested me in that moment. I could get myself to be interested. You know what I mean? Like when you're talking to a child and they bring something up, you're not like, stupid story, Dylan. You're like, cool, I didn't know that about batteries. Whatever it is, you just kind of go with it. And if we did that to each other more, I feel like we would, it's even things as simple as that builds the neural pathways of whether or not we're going to yes and everything else in our life, or we're going to just make resistance a habit.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so powerful. That is so powerful and so delicious. I love this concept of you yes-anding each other as its own verb.
It's a thing.
And this like communication, I feel, is an exchange of energy. It's a transference of energy. It's a sharing of energy. It's an exchange of energy. And for the areas I know in my life that I've felt have been challenged the most are the areas that when I step back and I look and I reflect, I see that it's actually because I am not communicating clear enough, right? Or I don't have the right tools that increase the flow and exchange, the positive exchange of energy between myself and whatever or whoever I'm interacting with. So ideas like that, such as yes-anding, welcomes in lost energy resources is what I'm hearing from my spirit guides to say. It brings in whole new sources of energy to a part of life that may be depleted. In your example, Melissa, that could be with your marriage or within yourself. I know for me, when I think of the areas of yes-anding, myself, just to embrace that expression that you create, I think is so beautiful. When I yes and myself, it's especially around working with my teams, working with my team. So this is a journey that I'm currently on and has really, really, really challenged me to improve my communication skills, right, around being able to effectively convey what's the vision that I'm seeing so that they can see it through their eyes, and being able to make sure that we're on the same page, as well as speaking in a way that brings the best out of others, as well as speaking in a way that brings the best out of me. And when I think about where am I, where can I, yes, and myself, it's especially when I'm interacting with my team. I'll be honest, even more honest, I have an issue with thinking that I still do have the issue of thinking that if it is to be, it's up to me. If I want it done right, I got to do it myself. And that, as you know from my story now, got me into the hospital. So apparently that's not the case, and is a spiritual journey that I'm on, is opening up to receive more love, support, friendship, etc. And so the more that I'm able to communicate with others who are in alignment with helping me, and the more that I'm able to receive their ideas, as well as bring mine to the table, the more we're able to achieve that state of flow, right? Or as we were talking about with improv, how things can just keep going, right? And being receptive. Nothing is rejected. Nothing is rejected. Dylan is not rejected because he likes bat.
Nice full circle moment. This is now a Seinfeld episode.
Yeah, for sure. I've noticed, though, working with other people, I feel weird saying this, Melissa, but it's true, so I'll just say it, that I tend to inspire other people to have ideas. I don't know what it is, other than is it ideas? Is it stamped on my forehead or what? But I tend to trigger people to have ideas when they're talking with me, especially when they are on my team. And it's tough leading a team of people who keep coming up with ideas when you need them to do the things. And so to take full circle, especially the yes-anding, when someone has an idea, I don't want to reject it and be like, all right, let's get back to what we're actually doing here, kind of shut them down in their creative flow. My approach, and I would encourage if anyone else is having trouble, receiving help too, whoever's listening to this, not just in the work context, but maybe in your relationship, your kids trying to help you, giving ideas all the time in the house, that when the idea comes up, I have found that it works, saying yes and bringing back to the point rather than no, let's not go there. Instead, let's focus on this. Instead of telling them, no, let's focus on this, I've been substituting, and I'm realizing this now as I'm saying this to you, Melissa, that instead of saying, no, let's focus on this, it's yes, and we're focusing on this. And it feels so much more inclusive and lighter. It's like we've freed up the energy flow and kept it flowing between the two of us. And as a healer, I really, really value that.
I had a realization recently about even yes-anding myself. Actually, I started doing this probably after that self-improvement, noticing when the pattern shifted. And I noticed how often I'll say something in truth, about myself, about something, and then I go on to something else. And it's is that but even necessary? And what I realized that the impact that it was making on my life, though, is that my whole life I've felt misunderstood. I've always kind of felt like an outsider, like I didn't belong. I found a lot of healing and understanding of myself when I realized I was an empath, but I'm all combobulated now. And I've always thought of myself as just very complicated. And before, I used to think, I'm not fixable. Back when I viewed myself as broken, back when that was one of my self-beliefs. And the moment I started to and myself more often, listeners of this podcast, you will notice it in episodes now. The amount of times that I'll say something and then I'll say and really loud and then something else. And it might be contradictory, but it's not contradictory. And it's because we're not these singular, like simplistic people. We're all complex and multidimensional. That doesn't necessarily mean we're complicated unless you like that word, unless that word is helpful and empowering to you. But for me, it sort of felt disempowering. It felt like I was chaotic and that because I was misunderstood, it was too hard to understand myself. But the moment I started viewing myself as multifaceted and multi-passionate and just complex instead of complicated, the words that felt empowering to me, and it might be different for somebody else, and I anded that onto things like, yes, I am super basic in these ways. I like matcha lattes and yoga and dogs and Lululemon. Yes, and also all of these other things that make me unique. It just changed the way that I looked at myself. And so much is about that. It's like just analyzing the words that we use, whether we're talking about ourselves, other people, our relationship. And so I make a point of that pretty often now where I'll just sort of pause after I say something, especially if I feel on a soapbox and emotional about it, whether that's enthusiastic or passionate or angry or whatever. I'll take a moment of silence afterwards and just reflect back on what I said, because those are the things that are bringing up emotions, and those are the things that are more likely to manifest into my life. So I just said a bunch of stuff with a bunch of emotion. Now, can I reflect? What words did I use? And is that going to be something that's going to manifest something empowering or disempowering in my life? And sometimes I'll just reword it a little bit to feel better about it, to feel better after my soapbox speech so that I know I'm co-creating with the universe something positive instead of something negative.
This is so juicy. Yeah, thank you. My spirit guides just said never too much. The idea of being too much.
Hold on. I have chills all over my body right now because like 2 months ago, all of a sudden I had the idea for the book that I've been that everyone keeps telling me to, like my whole life, people have been like, write a book. And then all of a sudden the name popped into my head like 2 months ago and I decided I'm going to be calling it Too Much. And then you just said never too much. And it's because I've always been chasing too much. I've always thought I was too much. And so my life is about healing the too much. And you just said that. And now I have chills all over my whole body.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, for everyone listening in, I've got like the Home Alone face on. We go good. Yeah. Wow. And I'm just so grateful to be guided by spirit, and I'm honored to get to be a force for confirmation and validation of guidance that you've already received. A sign of really powerful guidance is that it comes from multiple sources on a continuous basis. Like if there's something about spirit that when she speaks, it's in surround sound. And I love that. So I'm honored to get to be a part of that confirmation. But following with that idea of never too much. So my spirit guide said womanhood and femininity and feeling. There's something about having emotions, feeling, expressing with passion that is taught to us as human beings, not just as women, but people in general. We're taught that it's uncivilized to have too much feeling, or that you're being over the top, or you're becoming rowdy if you get really passionate about something. Sit down, right? In kindergarten, it's just like, don't slap your neighbor. That kind of stuff. Don't try to eat the chalk. Like, I understand you're trying to have a sensual relationship with the items in your environment, but don't put it in your mouth. Like, there's wisdom and love and protection in some of that, right? Protecting our neighbors from being slapped randomly, as well as protecting your digestive tract from having to deal with chalk. And what can happen, though, is that at like deeper neural layers, the human animal becomes domesticated of, my exuberance is dangerous. My enthusiasm is out of line, out of bounds. Like my passion is not passion, it's craziness or mania or weird. Like there's this self-domestication that begins to happen in us as human animals that can take like a little bit of love and protection and take it all the way that, especially when I'm talking to clients of mine, we talk about self-silencing, where it's like, I'm going to put myself down. I'm going to silence myself. I'm going to shut up before anyone tells me to, because that's like me being a good girl or a good boy, like, because I work with men as well. So this inner self-silencer or mute button that we'll apply to ourselves to manage this image of being too much. Have you seen that, or in yourself or in others? Like, you tell me, Melissa.
It's all the things. I have always been a rebel. And so one of my old best friends was, she was telling me, she was one of the first people to talk about the good girl mentality. And I was like, I don't understand. If you tell me this is how I'm a good girl, I'm going to do the other thing. And also, it's specific situations that bring out different sides of me. I remember specifically my first memory of feeling absolute utter shame was on a playground as a child. I was at a new school. I was always at new schools. I moved schools a lot. And I learned to meet friends pretty quickly because I was moving schools a lot. And this little girl, Gabrielle, mind you, we're in first grade. She goes, calm down, Melissa, you're too hyper. What first grader tells another kid they're hyper? Now looking back, that's probably something they heard at home, but I'm like, aren't we all hyper? Like, how are you so calm? Like, I've got all this wired energy running through me. But I remember I was just like happy to be around them, and I immediately shrunk. Like, I shrunk down, I stepped away from the circle. And so there's moments that bring out that moment. It ties back to that moment. And so when it's in a professional setting, or like, I don't know, there's a lot of situations where I feel confident in what I'm going to say, but there's other situations where there's just something specific about the friendship setting, and it tends to be more casual settings. And it's when somebody kind of harps on me trying to be center of attention, or trying to be, or I like too much energy in that way. For some reason, I will feel that shame bubble back up. And I've done a lot of work on it, so it doesn't affect me quite as much as it did before, but, I know that it's there, and there's that pain point from that one moment as a little kid. I should find her on Facebook and be like, you ruined me, Gabby. Just kidding. Just kidding. You're fine, Gabby, if you're out there.
Yeah. And oh my God, shame. Yeah, what the heck? How we manage one another as a herd of human animals. Like, this is how I care for you. This is how I care for us as a social group, is I make myself and you and everyone feel shame according to some externally defined set measuring system of like good, hyper, ridiculous, or not enough, which is the opposite of being too much, right? So you're not bringing enough energy. Why aren't you smiling? Why aren't you happy, Susan? Right? Why aren't you smiling? This social consciousness of the domesticated version of us as human animals. And I'm just, as I bring this up, as we look at this together, as we bring this up, I just want to surround that with healing light, because I feel that especially within the last few years, not just from COVID, from many things that have been going on in social consciousness, that there's an awareness around why are we upholding outdated and obsolete standards for one another. So whether we're looking at LGBTQ plus rights, or whether we're looking at diversity, equality, and inclusion in the workplace, or as we're looking at work-life balance, work-home balance, there's been more and more questioning of why are we upholding obsolete standards. For me personally, I really had an awakening around this when I decided to go and study with Regina Thomas-Hours, one of my teachers, because I personally, because of my, I've been assaulted in the past, and I know that what that's like. I stopped feeling. Like, me having feeling would trigger those parts of me that I thought were too visible and open to attack. And so when I went to work with Regina, I learned about moving through life in the feminine versus moving through life in the masculine. And the masculine, how the masculine responds to trauma is either it attacks or shuts down like a clam, just like whoosh, clam shut. And rather than going into attack mode, I personally went into clam mode, like clamshell mode. Whoop. All right, so bad things happen if you're open. So rather than opening and becoming more aggressive in the masculine, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to shut down and clam close. And it really manifested in my body, Melissa, like in TMJ, temporal mandibular joint disorder, like the stress of the grinding of my teeth whenever I would have emotion or feeling, or I would suck my grief or anger down because I'm not supposed to have grief and anger because other people in my life have grief and anger and theirs is more important than mine. As an empath, everybody's feelings I absorb, and therefore feelings are dangerous. So I'm not going to have feelings because I don't want to be a dangerous person, right? All of the story that I'm telling myself as an empath of the self-silencer, turning it up all the way. And then studying with Regina, I learned that that's part of my intuitive masculine, just trying to desperately protect me after a great shock, right? Or an intense pain. Whereas there's also the feminine at the same time wanting to express, wanting to come out. And if you're open to it and understanding of how the feminine works, that you can achieve a level of expression that actually protects you, rather than feeling like my emotions are something that makes me dangerous or an annoying or too much or taking up too much space kind of person. Instead, my expression protects the level of quality and value going on for everyone, and myself included. And bringing my expression, bringing my feelings adds color, adds preciousness, adds value and direction to our exchange, whether it's me and, an intimate partner, or me and my team, or me and my clients, me and my parents, etc., that my feelings have value. It's not that you shouldn't have feelings and that makes you a safe person, but instead leaning into and allowing for feelings in a conscious way makes everyone have permission to be passionate and feeling people. And that creates the container for safety. Like, I used to think that being a safe person to be around is having no feelings. But now I understand that I'm hiding the truth. And that essentially is much more dangerous than concealing my raw emotion or my raw feelings. And oddly enough, I'm so grateful. I've manifested people in my life who now they want to know how I feel. Like the people who haven't been able to handle how I feel have been effectively repelled by me. But now the people who are here are like, all right, tell me what's really on your mind. And they'll cry with me rather than being like, all right, that's enough of that. That's ridiculous. Or
right?
Like, yeah.
I went through the same thing for so long. Like, that's why I was just telling one of my friends that for so many years I felt like I was running from something. And things started to change in my life when I felt like I was running towards something. But then I started finding myself when I started just being in that in-between and being okay with that journey, with like the here and the now. And I started to understand my emotions in a new way from many mentors, from books, from people I've interviewed. Well, it was kind of before the interviews started, but I had never even thought of the idea that possibly emotions could be guidance in a way, that maybe this is what my body needs at this moment. So suppressing all of my emotions is a really effective way to suppress all of my inner guidance. And then I wondered why I felt so lost. Not only so lost, but I would just sort of blend into the lives of the people around me. So I'd have a new boyfriend and suddenly all his friends were my friends, his hobbies were my friends. I'd have a new clique and I was just always at their house. No one ever came to mine. I kept my place like this secret, safe place. And I wasn't shy at all. I'd just go into other people's zones and all of a sudden be a big semi-version of them for years. And so when the process of healing from my own trauma was actually just the process of understanding who I am, how to listen to my guidance, how to follow it, and how to do that while also not closing myself off. Because I think I went in an evolution of, you touched on it earlier about not being able to receive or ask for help and do everything myself. And that was my protective mechanism. I was like, okay, I did everything for everyone else too much. Now it's just me. This is just my opinion, whatever. Like, I have to do it on my own. I'm not bringing anybody else in, because once I bring somebody else in, it was the same hurt as when that one boyfriend broke up with me and all his friends were my friends and I had to rebuild my whole life. And so now if I protect what's mine and it's just mine, then nobody else, if somebody moves on with their life, they're not taking a piece of me with them, is how I viewed it. Not realizing that we're all influenced by each other. We're all pieces of each other. We're pieces of the collective. We are an aspect of the collective itself. And so I wanted to kind of bring that back, because I had this specific moment of when I remember going to the grocery store with my mom when I was a teenager, and she had to get a lotto ticket for my stepdad. And she called him and she was like, how do I do this lotto machine? I was like, Mom, it's a step-by-step lotto machine that 95-year-old women can do. Why can't you do it? You have to call him. You are now in a relationship and you've asked for help too many times that you can't do anything on your own. And I remember feeling ashamed for her. And it was one of the moments in my life that I was like, this is why I don't ask for help from anybody. Because I don't want to get to a place where I am reliant on other people or they take things from me. And so I know there's a lot with what I just spilled out there, but how do you protect your energy and keep that authentic version of you while still meshing your energy with everybody else? Because that is what the joy of life is.
Oh, I love this question. Yeah. This is so powerful. And that was a lot, and it was fabulous. So I just want I know that was a lot.
Was it too much, Victoria? Just kidding.
No. Who would dare tell a waterfall you're spouting too much water? No, what a blessing. What a blessing. So much nourishment that pours from you and from truth, right, when we're in our truth. And with that question, so how do we, the word that dropped in response to what you asked was the word grounding. How do we preserve our authentic selves while also meshing and interplaying with others' energy constantly? Is having an awareness of what is grounding in general, right? Knowing what grounding is in general, and then especially having a practice, like a personal practice of knowing how to ground oneself that's integrated. Not when I was first studying Reiki, I remember one of my masters would say, you put your shields up in the morning, and then at night you put your shields up again, and then that was it. It was like, what about the rest of the day? Where'd the shields go? And every single day I'm supposed to do this? This is crazy. And I came across one of my friends who does different forms of advanced energy work and magic. And he's like, I don't know, why don't you just make a shield that programs and sets itself up and then plug it into a source bigger than you so that it can just keep going. Thank you. Right? Be in line. So that with that, understanding how to ground, there are many different methods for grounding. But at the same time, for some of us, we need to know, what does grounding mean to me? And for me, the more, especially as an empath, I had to learn about grounding electrical engineer style of okay, let me look at circuitry and how there's in electrical engineering, that's where the word grounding comes from. It doesn't just come out of Reiki or any of the energy arts. It actually comes from electrical engineering. And that in circuitry, right, so this is how it works. in the wall, we have our sockets that you plug into in order to get electricity. And electricity is the transference of energy. Energy is the capacity to do work. So in every socket, there's like 2 prongs and then hopefully a third on the bottom. The 2 prongs are the positive and the negative currents. And then the prong on the bottom is the ground. Anyone who studies electrical engineering knows that if you don't have that third one, you cannot take high capacity. You cannot take high capacity. If lightning strikes, your whole system will pop. So what does lightning strike meaning in metaphorically in our lives? Positive lightning. A whole new level of your business opens up. Or here comes the love of your life, etc. Something amazing happens. Or you win the lottery, right? Positive lightning can strike. Do you have the capacity for that high of an upgrade, or are you going to get overwhelmed? Like many people get cursed by winning the lottery. Or when they manifest the love of their life, they're like, oh, but I don't have time for that because I got to go over here, right? Or blah, blah, blah. So there's positive lightning that can strike in our lives that pops our energetic system. And then there's also negative lightning that can strike in our life. The same way, like if it hits the house, if you don't have a grounded electrical grid, the light bulbs might pop. I've had that happen. I remember in the dorm room back when I was at Rutgers, like I heard a light bulb explode because it wasn't grounded. So with negative lightning, somebody dies or you get sick or hello, global pandemic, right? And you're trying to have a business and how about a nice like global pandemic to screw you up? Like negative lightning can strike, but what happens? Are you able to still function or are you going in total shutdown? If you only have the top 2 prongs of a given like plug, like if you're plugging in your cell phone's not designed for high capacity. The most powerful devices in the house, they'll have that 3 prong, like your fridge or your washer dryer, your wet dry vac, or something like your snow plow, whatever, something high powered. Has the 3 prongs because of that bottom one. And the bottom one is the ground, which literally is a metal bar that threads to a metal thread that threads throughout the house to another metal bar that sticks in the what? The ground. The dirt. This is connection to neutral. So the earth in electrical engineering is the largest ground, the largest neutral, period. Like, that's why when lightning strikes the earth, it's fine. It's fine because the earth is huge. It has no problem taking massive, massive jolts of energy. And if you didn't know that there is both positive and negative lightning, there actually is. Positive lightning comes from the top of the thundercloud. Negative lightning comes from the bottom side. Just going to put that on the side. But anyway, so the earth is the largest ground in electrical engineering. That's why we have that 3rd prong. And that's why for the things that pull the most amps, aka pull the most energy or do the most work, they have to have that 3rd prong or else they'll pop the entire energy system. But if you're connected to the ground, connected to your neutral, right? If we think of this metaphorically, spiritually, if you know how to get to your neutral state where you're like, okay, I just hit the lottery. I'm really happy and I'm okay. I know exactly what to do with this money. I have these offshore accounts. I have this person on speed dial who's amazing at investments. I have so-and-so who's won the lottery before. I can talk to them like, boom, massive positive lightning, but it knows exactly where to go versus, woo, I just hit the lottery. I'm going to spend it all. Like that kind of freak out or, oh my God, I just hit the lottery. I've met a guy who this happened to. I just hit the lottery. I'm officially terrified of people. I got like, he was very, very like pathologically anxious ever since he hit the lottery. My God. But be kind to yourself if you don't have a connection to your neutral. It only comes from being in the practice of it. So people like you and I, Melissa, have been hit by positive and negative lightning. We've been hit by that. We've been through some stuff. And because of that, that forced us to consider, how can I come back? How can I be resilient? How can I find a space of empowerment or self-love or peace of mind again? We've been forced to, by being hit by the lightning, to consider this. But if anyone is listening in and hasn't learned about how to ground yourself, now's the time. I mean, I highly recommend, if you want to have a sense of being your most authentic self and being expressive and connecting and intercoursing with everyone, intercoursing, because intercourse means communication, not just you. So the more that you're able to have your sense of self, your truth, your neutral, your natural state, be connected to your own inner earth, your inner ground, the more you'll have no problem going out there and playing with whatever energy, whatever's being thrown your ways, because you have that connection to your neutral, which is being grounded. And that's actually why I wrote my book, Natural Intuition Now, because like the whole book, even though it's really short, the whole book's dedicated to what the heck is grounding. Because I'm like, if I die today, I want to at least leave behind an explanation of this. Because it's one thing that changed my life, and I know the lives of people in my life who I care about or shared it with. Mm-hmm.
That was the coolest story to end on. I just learned so much about actual energy. I think we often hear about something in one aspect and forget that, you know, energy is the same regardless of which field of study that you're in. And we're like, oh, well, this is just the woo-woo energy. And a lot of people are like, I could take that or leave it. It's not even really real if I don't believe it, you know? And it's like, no, but this is how it works. Like this plug goes to the dirt. Put your feet on the ground. Like one of my friends was just my own mom was making fun of me because she said something and I was like, you should walk barefoot on the ground. And she's like, I don't believe in that kind of thing. I was like, I don't know what you're talking. Okay. She was mad at me that day. So everything was coming out, but right. So anyways, thank you so much for all of the wisdom that you and your spirit guides who made an appearance in this episode brought to us today. For listeners that are interested in learning more about you, where is the best place for them to connect with you online?
Yeah, so the best place to find more, especially because you're listening to a podcast right now, is at my website, victoriawhitfield.com/podcast. So you go there to victoriawhitfield.com/podcast. There's all the freebies that I have as gifts and goodies for podcast listeners. Like that's the best front door for my podcast listeners to come to.
All the links for this episode will be at mindlove.com/218. I bet you know what your challenge this week is going to be. Yep, you're going to try some grounding activities. My absolute favorite one is just simply walking on the ground barefoot. I did this a lot at the beginning of the lockdowns. I felt like I was going crazy with everything happening around me. So I would walk my dog and I would just walk in the grass. I'd walk really slowly so I could intentionally focus on my feet hitting the ground, absorbing that grounding energy or releasing my energy into the ground, into the source of it all. When I really need something extra, I'd get on my hands and knees and put my hands in the ground as well. I actually learned this from doing mushrooms at festivals. If you get too in your head or you feel yourself losing reality, they say to put your feet and hands on the ground and possibly eat some root vegetables. Well, I am not getting that out of control anymore, but sometimes shit feels crazy anyways. So it works for me. But let me know which grounding exercise you choose. Leave a comment on this show notes page at mindlove.com/218 or reach out to me on Instagram at mindlovemelissa. If you love this show, please consider leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It's a great way to boost my rankings a little bit, to attract even more amazing guests. And I just love reading them. It's my favorite way to hear from you is through a 5-star review. Other ways to support the show are by joining Mind Love Premium. You can do that at mindlove.com/premium or supporting one of my amazing sponsors. And that's all for today. So thanks for giving your mind a little love today, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning into Your Higher Frequency with Mind Love. Head to mindlove.com for a free gift to keep your vibes up until next week.